An overview of the storage and dispatch areas. So setting up the storage area, you need to set a matrix up that matches your existing storage racking system. So we need to replicate the racking layout in Contract Controller using the matrix table, where we can indicate the site, the building, the area, and then fundamentally the rack, the bay number, the level, the position. We can color code it, and we can give any notes about the racking, whether it can hold small items or larger items. So why do we need this? Firstly, to allow completed items to be stored in a relevant loading area, and this ensures all items for a contract are in one place or easily identified as to where they're stored if they are in different areas. It ensures that all required items are sent to site. Stock items held in the stores may be allocated to areas to facilitate a quick location of items and stock holding. And specific goods received for a contract from a purchase order may also be stored in a location, and this is ready for use in the workshop when required, or if they're to be sent directly to site. So the matrix will hold all the various areas, indicate if there's items in there. Multiple items may be stored in one area, and a complete audit of all the items that have been in and out of a location will also be kept. Location identity labels may then be printed and adhere to the relevant areas. Material stock items may then have a storage location added, and this may be selected either from a drop-down listing or by scanning a location code. Completed items or contract-specific goods received items may be recorded as currently stored in location. Again, this may be selected from a drop-down listing or by scanning the location code. Adding completed items to a storage or loading area will then keep the production informed of where an item is located prior to its dispatch. This will also assist in ensuring that all required items are sent to site. More information about Contract Controller is always available at www.contractcontroller.co.uk. And now we will go on to a short presentation with a live demonstration of this area. This video will show us how we access the storage and dispatch areas and how they're used within the system. So from the stores screen, I can click the list storage areas, and that will give me a list of all the areas that have been set up so far. And by clicking on the various area, I can see what items have been in that area at any given time. So we've got a complete audit of what was put in, what was taken out, and this will tell us if the area is currently in use with anything. Now, to manage these areas and to add or change them, you need to click the Manage Setup button. Now, you probably won't have access to do that initially, so you need to get access to do that. That's done in your system settings. It might be your system administrator needs to do this. So go to Access to System, Employee Listing, and Access to System. Go to your menu access, then navigate through Departments, Production, Stock Control, and Manage Setup Storage Dispatch Areas. Just tick that. And now you'll have access to that area. Another way to get to this is through the menu system by going to Departments, Production, Stock Control, Manage Setup Storage Dispatch Areas. End up in the same place. So this is a listing of all the current areas as set up. We've got our goods in holding areas with various references, our loading and dispatch areas, and our stores area. Goods in holding area we tend to use for items that have been bought specifically for a contract on a purchase order that we want to put in a stores area that's not for general use. Loading and dispatch generally for larger completed items that have been manufactured, and we're putting them physically in an area. And then stores, this area will grow quite big. So this will be like all your pigeonholes for the areas where you're keeping your drawer runners, your hinges, screws, etc. So to add a new area into the stores, if we wanted to add in an area for rack, say rack D in stores, simply say add new area, go to the top, say that it stores location code will be populated automatically. So I need to say the site. You don't have to fill all of these fields in if you don't need them. So I'll just say that Stockport factory. And we'll say it's the stores. And we're going to say it's rack D, bay 01, level A, position 1. We could give the ticket a color coding I want, and we could give notes. So we might say this is a small area suitable for smaller items such as hinges or screws. Now it can get a bit laborious if you're creating many of a very similar area. So I can click on an area and click duplicate location for selected area, and it will make a copy, an exact copy of the one I've just highlighted. And I can then just change the relevant area of that. So I could say this is area position 2. You'll see that the code is changed accordingly. So again, if I want to do a third position in that rack, highlight that. And then simply change that to 3. I can change any of the criteria for these simply by changing whatever we need. So if I click that, it will allow that to be changed. But if an item has items in or has had items in, it will alert me to that. So if I go and change an existing area, the system will alert me to say, although there's no items currently stored in there, there's 3 items that have been, so we need to keep the system consistent. So we can say, yes, change the new code, and it will change every single item that was in that to match that particular code. So it's quite easy to change things if you've started setting things up, they're not quite right. Also, if you've entered an item in and you don't want it, simply click on the line, double click on it, and then just say delete. And that will delete that area from there. So once you've set that up, simply click finish. You've got another area where you can print a label for that if you want to fix it to the rack. Simply highlight the item or many items, click print label. I just preview on screen. And that will then print a rack label that can be scanned. So that's setting up the storage matrix. So let's see that in use. So let's see what we've got in there at the moment. So if I click issue items from storage or dispatch, you can see that there's nothing in there at the moment to dispatch from. So let's add something into that area. So we'll add an item. So we need to either select the rack from a drop-down list, or I can simply scan the rack code from a label. It loads the rack in, and then I simply need to scan. I'm going to scan some items that I've received from a goods received note from a purchase order. So I simply scan that batch code, enters the item in, and say, well, we received 10 of those items. And we can receive as many items we want to the same rack, or I can change that and still receive items. Once I've finished that, click confirm. That will now be stored in that area. So if I come out of this screen and if I look at issue from stores, you can see there that we can see we've got those items in that rack position. Now, if I go and actually look at that as well, so if I say list storage areas, you can see now that this area that I scanned in has got a tick. So if I click on that, we can see the added location, the various items from that goods received, and we've got 10 in from there. So let's say we want to take 5 of those from there and put them out to the workshop to be used on a particular contract, or it could even go into a delivery note. So we add issue items from the storage dispatch. We'll say that this is for a particular employee. So we'll say it's Andrew. So we can either type his code in or scan his ID. And then we need to scan the item that we're issuing. So it's located the item, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to issue 5 of those. We can now see that there's only 5 left in that bay. So if I come back out of that, come back to look at the items in storage dispatch, you can now see 10 added. We can then see that taken from location at the date and the time, 5 were taken. So now let's look at putting a completed production item into our storage area. So first of all, let's just look at a particular contract. So if we look at contract 2843, and we go to production status, and we look at these items here, we can see some are in loading area, some are certainly bench ones at machining. So we're going to look at 6. Okay, so we're going to look at that item there. So assuming that's gone through the whole of the production process, been through to wrapping, and now we want to store it in the relevant area. So we simply say add items to storage and dispatch, select the particular location. So we're going to put it in a loading area. Then I can scan the production tracking sheet number. I then confirm that we're putting that into that area. And we'll then be able to see that is now in that area. So we can see here that we've then added to location the example reception desk. But more importantly, if I was to look at the contract, we'll now see that it's been placed in the loading area and where it is. So by entering these items in production, the production manager, the contracts manager are all aware of where these items are, whether they're in the loading area, whether they've been dispatched, or wherever. Okay, so now let's look at how we add a storage area to a material library item. So I'm just going to pick one of the items on my dashboard. Now at the moment I can't add any of the stock details. I need to click the amend stock details button. By default the passcode is BOSS, BOSS. This may have been changed by your system administrator. So now I can enter stock details or a location code. So I can manually type the code in. I can select it from my list, or I can scan it from a barcode label. So if I just scan the code in there, then just simply accept the record. Now if I go back to my storage areas, you will then see that we have the item indicated there, that we've got an item in, and you can see now that I've added in 5 of those door closers. So as they're issued from stock, that will then be depleted. And that's all there is to setting up and using your storage dispatch areas.